Alright, in this video today we're going to be going over the 2016 STAAR release. I'm trying to get you ready, a little bit more practice for the STAAR before you take it. So we're going to do the same thing that we did the other day. You're going to answer a question. Once you answer it, then you're going to hit play on the video and watch me work it out and compare what you did to what I did. If you made a mistake, I want you to make a correction to your work. If you did not make a mistake, then just check it off. And at the end of this, you're going to use this packet once again as a study guide to help prepare you for your final STAAR test. So let's take a look at question number 1. Question number 1 says, four students are each trying to raise the same amount of money for a class trip. The table below shows how much each student's goal has been met. Which list shows the numbers in the table in order from least to greatest? Now, if they give you a problem, and I'm going to move this up just a little bit so you can see all of our answer choices. If they give you a problem where they are listing values and asking you to order them from least to greatest, the best option to do is the spreadsheet. So now you use the spreadsheet to find slope, but we can also use it to order numbers. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the spreadsheet real fast, and we'll go from there. So if I pull my calculator up, right, and I go over here and go to my spreadsheet function, I'm going to hit enter. Once I do, we want to do just like if we're looking for slope. We want to change A to X, change B to Y, and then we're just going to put our numbers all inside of here. Now it doesn't matter which option choice you choose, or you could have taken the number straight from the table right here. It doesn't really matter. It's going to order them for you either way. So I guess I'll take them from the table right here. So we have 0.7, we have 2/3, we have 5/8, and we have 65%. So 65, hit that question mark button and keep hitting it until it goes to the percent, hit enter. Now once we've put these into this particular function right here in our spreadsheet, you're going to go ahead and hit home. You're going to go over to your statistics, hit enter, and notice it has all the numbers graphed for you, right? Now in this case we are not going to put the y-axis. All we need is just the x-axis. So we're going to go to X, click on it, and hit enter for X. And now our numbers are ordered. At this point you just move your cursor over the number and it'll tell it to you. Now keep in mind that whenever we do this, it is ordering them from least to greatest. In this particular question, it does say to order the numbers, which list shows the numbers in the table from least to greatest, and that's what we want. The reason I'm saying keep in mind, I want you to understand that this is least to greatest is because if it were to ask you to order them from greatest to least, you'd be starting from the right and going back. But notice it goes from a smaller number to a bigger number, so we are going from least to greatest. So our first number should be 5/8. So we can look down here and see which one's 5/8, and we can say, okay, well we have two options with 5/8. So we're going to go ahead and cross out the first two because it can't be A or B, but it may be C or D. So now we're going to check the next number. So just move your mouse over, and it says the next answer should be 65%. Well, D has 2/3 in its place, so we can go and cross out D. Therefore, C is the correct answer. Super simple. Use this function on your spreadsheet in order to order real numbers. If you're asked to on the STAAR test, guaranteed you'll be able to get that question right. So go ahead, pause this video, and then I want you to do the next problem on your own, and then watch me go over it to see if you did it right. Alright, in this problem, number 2, it says which graph shows a proportional relationship between x and y. So when you think proportional, I want you to think two things. You're looking for an equation of y equals kx, or on a graph, you're looking to see that it goes through origin. And it's really that simple. When it says proportional, I want you to think origin. So all we need to do is look at these four graphs and see which one goes through origin. So if you look at the first one, it goes through origin right here, where the y-axis and the x-axis cross. That's origin. That's 0.00. So F is correct. So it has to be the answer. Now we can just roll out the others and just see why they wouldn't work. If you look at this one, it does not go through origin. This one does not run through origin, and this line does not run through origin. So the correct answer is F. Keep that in mind. Also, if you find a problem like this later on your real test, it's possible that it could say which one shows a non-proportional relationship. And in that case, right, you're looking for the one that wouldn't be going through origin. But in this case, since it says proportional right up here, we're looking for the one that goes through origin. Go ahead and pause this video, go on to the next problem, and try it on your own before watching it any further. Alright, in problem number 3, it says point M is located at 4, 6 on the coordinate grid. Point M is translated 8 units left. So we're going to go ahead and box that and underline it. And 9 units down. Box it, underline it, to create point M prime. Which measurement is closest to the distance between point M and point M prime in units? So we're looking at the distance between 2 points on a coordinate plane. And anytime you're looking at distance between 2 points, I want you to think, I want to make this a triangle. So we're going to make this a triangle, but the first step that we have to do is we have to go ahead and plot our point and then plot the new point. Then we can make a right triangle, and we can use the Pythagorean Theorem in order to solve this. So it says at 4, 6, so we're going to start at origin. So you should be putting your pencil at origin. And then to go to 4, 6, we go over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 6 is going to be up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if you look, you should be on 4, and then on the y-axis you should be on 6. So that's point 4, 6. Now, it says that point M was translated. That just means that it shifted, or it slid over, either slides up or down or left and right. And in this case it says it shifted 8 units to the left. So if I go from here, I'm going to go 8 units left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I should be on -4. Then it says it went 9 units down. So I'm going to go 9 units down. And that's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's going to put me at, on the x-axis, I'm at -4. And on the y-axis, I'm at -3. So -4, -3. Now keep in mind, whenever you're counting on a graph like this, if you notice one mistake that's easy to make that I've seen several people do on similar problems that are not STAAR, is notice these numbers kind of sit in this first box. Like if you look, these first units, these first squares, on the left side we have numbers, so they kind of sit almost in those boxes right there. And you might forget when you're on origin, if you move to the left one time, this first line is your first unit. So what I've seen some people do is they'll start here and they'll jump over to 2 and kind of skip that line. So make sure you don't do that, right? If you jump this way, you move over 1 line. If you jump over this way, you move over 1 line. So as you're counting over, when you hit this right here, make sure that you stop at -1 and count that as 1 unit as you're counting over. But look, we have our 2 points now. So now we just need to use the Pythagorean Theorem and turn this into a right triangle. So let's go ahead and look at the Pythagorean Theorem and write it down real quick. On your formula chart, you've been given the Pythagorean Theorem. It's at the very bottom, and it says it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And remember that a and b are both legs. So those are both legs. And that c is always the one that we draw that arrow from that corner of the right angle. And that's going to be your hypotenuse. It is the longest side of the triangle. So let's go ahead and write that down. We are going to be using a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now to make this a right triangle, what I want to do is I want to draw a line that comes over and stops when it lines up with this dot on top. Once it lines up, then I'm going to take my line up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make me again another one of those makeshift rulers. They give you this grid paper. I would take it and fold it. Make yourself a nice ruler so that you can make your lines nice and straight. It doesn't take very long to do, and it'll help you make sure that you don't draw a line in a way that'll throw you off, maybe have you miscount. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here, and I'm going to look and say, okay, if I go straight down this line, it should end right here. So let me draw over till I hit that point and stop, and now I'm going to go from here straight up to that point. Now, because I'm going straight up to that point from there, this makes a right angle right here. So I'm going to put my little right angle symbol. So now, in order to find the distance between these 2 points, that is just going to be the hypotenuse. So I'm going to go ahead and connect that. And that's what we're looking for. So now that we got our triangle drawn, I'm going to draw my arrow from here, right? It points to the hypotenuse. This is C, this is A, and I'm going to call this B. And remember, A and B are interchangeable. You could put A down here and B up here. It doesn't matter, as long as you don't mix up C, which is the hypotenuse. So now we need to go ahead and count how long is leg B and how long is leg A. And we can do that by just counting our units. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we should have already known it was 8 because remember we moved it 8 units to the left. If we moved it 8 units to the left, it has to be 8 units long when we're going side to side. So B is 8. We moved it 9 units down, so the length of A is going to be 9, but we'll double check. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So A is 9. Now that we got these 2 legs, we're just going to plug them into our equation. So for A, I'm going to put 9 squared. For B, I'm going to put plus 8 squared. And then equals C squared. And we're solving for C. So we can go ahead and use our calculators and use Numerical Solve to do that work for us. So I'm going to go ahead and put my calculator up here. We're going to hit go to calculate. Hit menu, number, or not number, algebra, Numerical Solve, hit enter, and we're just going to put this in 9 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared, and then put your comma and then C. That way you know that you're solving for C. And remember, the comma button is this bottom left button over here. Hit enter, and it gives me 12.04 units. So I'm going to go in and write that down. 12.04 units. And we're looking for which measurement is closest to the distance between point M and M prime. And out of these 4 answers, we have 12 down here, and that is the closest answer, so the correct answer is D. Go ahead and pause this video, complete the next problem on your own, and then recheck your answer. Alright, in problem number 4, it says Tamara invested $15,000 in an account that pays 4% annual simple interest. Tamara will not make any additional deposits or withdrawals. How much interest will Tamara earn on her investment at the end of 3 years? So I'm hoping when you see this, you saw that key word, simple interest, because that tells us exactly what formula we're going to use. And if we look at our formula chart, on our STAAR chart, if you go down to the bottom, it has your interest formulas. Notice this second one right here, it says simple interest. So we'll be using that formula, which basically gives us I, which is the interest earned on whatever amount that we're checking. And the formula is the interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. So we call that PRT. So I equals PRT. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and write that down. I equals P times R times T. So now we just need to figure out which one of these numbers is P, which one is R, which one is T. When it says Tamara invested $15,000, that's her initial amount, and that is always the principal. So we're going to put a P by it. It says in an account that pays 4% annual simple interest. Well, if they're paying 4% annual simple interest, that is our rate. That's our R. Then down here it says the investment is going to be for 3 years. So that's going to be our T, because that's our time. So now that we have our principal, our rate, and our time, we just need to go ahead and plug in those values. So for the principal, I'm going to plug in my 15,000, and I'm not going to put a comma because it can mess up the calculator. For my rate, I need to convert this rate. Now the rate, right, R, I'm going to write it over here, was 4%. But if I convert it, because remember it must be in decimal form, so I'm going to write the word right here, decimal form. All we have to do is put it in our calculator and hit the percent button and then hit enter. So let's go in and do that right quick. So we have 4%. And I know some of you are like, oh, I'll just do this in my head, and you can, but I'd recommend double checking it, because if you make a mistake on that 4% when you're moving that decimal, then you'll get the answer wrong, even if you did the entire process otherwise right. So I'm going to hit enter. Now notice it gives me 1 over 25. I'm going to put a decimal after my 4 this time, and that way it'll convert it to the decimal form. Now I'm going to go ahead and put %, hit enter again, and it gives me 0.04. So now I know that I'm 100% correct. It's converted it for me, so I'm going to put 0.04. And now we just have our t to deal with, which is our time. And that was 3 years. So I have this all together, and my I is equal to these 3 numbers multiplied. And that's going to tell me my answer. So let's go ahead and put that into our calculator. So we have 15,000. Notice I'm going to go ahead and use the parentheses. I personally like using parentheses. It keeps everything nice and neat and organized. The only time I don't use parentheses typically is if I'm using numerical solve. And then I'm going to put 0.04. And then I'm going to put my 3. And the parentheses tells it to multiply these values together. So hit enter. And it gives me $1,800 in interest. So I'm going to write 1,800. And I'm going to look for my answer. So if you look at these answer choices, F has 1,800 as well, so it is the correct answer. Now go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. An aquarium is being filled with water. The graph shows the height of the water over time as the aquarium is being filled. Which statement best describes the rate of change for this situation? So on number 5, it wants us to describe the rate of change. And remember, the rate of change is just another way of saying the unit rate, right? And we know that the unit rate also has a relationship with the slope. It is the slope, but it typically is in decimal form, because remember that it's some value that's over 1. That's what unit rate is. So I'd say before even approaching this to see which one's right, let's just figure out what the unit rate is. And there's a couple different ways we can do that. So I would go back to your spreadsheet. It's just not to get you mixed up. If you put 2 points in your spreadsheet off this graph, you'll be able to determine exactly what your slope is. It'll give it to you in decimal form when you do your linear regression, and you'll be able to pick the best answer choice. So let's take a look at it. So for instance, we could have this point right here. It has 2 and 5. And then this point right here, and it has, let's see, well that one doesn't have one. Let's go to the next one. Right here we have 4 and 10. So we have 2 and 5, and we have 4 and 10. So you can look at that and you can figure out what it is. Also, another thing you could have done is, since notice that it starts from origin, it starts from 0, and since it starts from 0, that tells you it's proportional. And when it's proportional, you could always just take the x value and put it over the y value, or I'm sorry, take the y value, put it over the x value, and it will tell you the rate. So 5 over 2, that's going to give us 2.5. So that is my unit rate, is 2.5. Now that's one way to do it if it starts from origin. This does not always work if it does not start from origin. Now I want to go ahead and put this in spreadsheet just to show you that we can also get the same answer that way. And if you feel comfortable, I know a lot of you really like using a spreadsheet, so you can do it that way, so that way you're doing everything the same way. Make sure that you don't make any mistakes. Let's go ahead and put it in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this right quick. Going to hit enter. You want to change A to X, change your B to Y, and we're going to put in our points. So we had 2, 5, right? Because 2 matched up and hit it, and then with 5. So we have 2 for X, and we have 5 for Y. And then our next point, we had 4 on X axis, and we had 10 on the Y. So 4 and 10. Now I'm going to leave this right here. I'm going to hit home. Once I hit home, I'm going to go over to statistics, that purple box, hit enter. Remember, we're going to change this axis on the left. It's always going to be Y. The axis on the bottom is going to be X. And then if we hit menu, option 461. So 4 is analyze, 6 is going to be linear regression, and then it says show linear mx plus b. Notice it says a positive 2.5. So that tells me my unit rate. right, or my slope. It is 2.5. So let's see which one of these has that as a unit rate, 2.5. A says the height of the water increases 20 inches per second. Well, we know it's 2.5, so it can't be A. The height of the water increases 1 inch per second. Well, it can't be B. The height of the water increases 5 inches per second. That's false. The height of the water increases 2.5 inches per second. Whether you got it this way, or whether you found 2 points on the line and put it in your spreadsheet and got the slope, you know that D is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and move on to the next one and try to do it on your own. Alright, on problem number 6, it says in the diagram, a person who is 6 feet tall is standing on the ground 3 feet away from point P. A line segment drawn from the top corner of the building to point P creates two similar triangles. Which proportion can be used to find H, the height of the building, in feet? So, it gives us some values. Notice those values are already labeled for us, right? We have our man standing here and he says he's 6 feet tall. And then he's 3 feet away from this point P. So let's go ahead and move this up. It says which proportion can be used to find H, the height of the building, in feet. I'm going to move this up just a little bit so we can see all our answer choices. I want you to notice that when we're taking a look at it, that this creates a right triangle, and you can even see the right angle sign right here. And then notice that we have this height, right? And that height goes up to the top of the building. It's the same height on the building on this side, if we move it down and take a look at it, as it is on this side. So in other words, as this is H, so is this portion of the triangle. It's H, and we don't know what it is. But we do know what some of the other values are. So we know that this is 18 feet. We know that this is labeled as H, and we don't know what the hypotenuse is. However, on this smaller triangle, right, it's going to make a similar triangle. And I want you to think about that. This is a similar triangle, and I'm just going to turn it into one. So it's basically a triangle within a triangle. If I go ahead and draw my right angle sign and draw my arrow towards that man, C is over here. That must mean this over here is A, and this over here is B. Now, what I would like for you to think about is, I drew my line kind of far back, but if I would have drawn it closer, just at the height of a man, and I'd say right here, then that would have made that a right triangle. And we know that's with a side of 6 feet, and then we have a width of 3 feet. So, with that being said, I should scratch this out, so just kind of ignore this line. Remember, we scoot it over so that it's right there at the height of the man. But that's still, 6 feet is going to be A, 3 feet is going to be B, and we don't know C. So we want to go ahead and find which proportion can be used to find H, the height of the new building, in feet. And what we're going to do is set up an equation that shows a proportion, because we have similar triangles. This is a right triangle. It's just smaller. And then this big one is a right triangle. It's larger, but they are similar triangles. In other words, what we have is this, and then we have a really big right triangle, like this. This is where the man is standing in it, right here. This is the one against the building. This one's 3 feet and 6 feet. This one right here is 18 feet, and this is H. So when we're going to set up a proportion, what we want to try to do is put everything from triangle number 1. So let's call this small one, I'm going to put a 1 in there, triangle number 1, and we'll call the big one triangle number 2. The way this works when you set up a proportion, you're going to have two fractional values. You want everything for triangle number 1 on top, everything for triangle 2 on the bottom. So I'm going to draw an arrow here. This helps me keep it lined up. If I don't write 1 and 2, sometimes what will happen with myself and even others is you might put a measurement for triangle 1 over here, and then put a measurement for triangle 2 over here, and then you'll get the proportion wrong. So what we want is we want to have 1 and 2, everything for 1 on top, everything for 2 on bottom, and we're going to see which one of these numbers looks like it works out. The other thing is, when you put 1 and 2, these two parts of each one of these triangles must have a relationship with one another. And so they must have some type of relationship. They must be the same side of the triangle if we're setting up a proportion. So let's see which one of these is correct and which one of these is wrong. So we'll go ahead and start with, so we're going to set up the proportion one way. So what we could have done is we could have said, well, if we're looking at triangle 1 and 2, right, we could say that 6 is equal to 3, and then we could say h is equal to 18. That's one way we could have written this, right? Our relationship, we have 6 and h. If you notice, and I'm going to highlight them, right? 6 and h are both the same side of the triangle. So if you notice that they're sitting over each other, these two have a relationship with one another. And then we have 3 over 18, because if you look, 3 is the base and 18 is the base. So those two have a relationship with one another. So 6 is equal to 6 over h is equal to 3 over 18. So that's one way we could have wrote it. Now if we look at this, if you notice, there's no option. We don't have, none of these show 6 over h right here. None of these show 6 over h. So there is a second way that we could set this proportion up. We need to keep everything in line, but instead of having everything for 1 on top and everything for 2 on bottom, what we can do is we can also set it up a second way where we have everything for 1 on the left side and everything for 2 on the right side, and then our relationship is going to show between our numerator and our denominator. So let me go in and set up these bars, right? My fraction bars. And I know this may look a little confusing, but you see how we set this up? We're going to do the same thing down here. The next thing that we can do is we could say, instead of 6 over h, we could say 6 over 3. In other words, everything for side 1, for triangle 1, is over here. So there's my 6 from triangle 1, and then I'm going to put my 3 for triangle 1 on the bottom. Then I'm going to look at triangle 2. So if I have 6 on top, right, and 3 on bottom, then I should have my h on top and my 18 on bottom. So then I have h over 18. I'm going to box this because these are the only two options we have. If we want to solve this correctly, we have to keep things organized, and it's either going to be this option or this option. We already checked this one, right? We said it's not on there, so we're not going to use that. So let's look at this one right here. Do we have 6 over 3 is equal to h over 18? And if you look, this is 3 over h. It can't be f. We have 6 over 3. That's good. Is equal to h over 18. That's good. So G is correct. H, it couldn't be h because look, it says 3 over 15. There's not even a 15 in here. So that's an impossibility. Then we have 6 over 3, which that checks out good. But notice we have 18 over h. So in that case, the parts don't correspond. You're saying 6 and 18 have a relationship if you set it up this way. So 6 is the height of the triangle, 18 is the base. Those do not have a relationship because they are not the same part of the triangle. So it couldn't have been J. So go ahead and pause this video, and then I want you to move on to the next problem and see if you can do it on your own. Alright, in problem number 7. It says Carnival M charges an entrance fee of $5 and 65 cents per ticket for the rides. Carnival P charges an entrance fee of $10 and 45 cents per ticket for the rides. How many tickets must be purchased in order for the total cost at Carnival M and Carnival P to be the same? So let's go ahead, we're going to go back through here, we're going to underline and box our important information, we're going to create 2 equations, and we're going to solve this. So when you see one like this that has 2 different unit rates, 2 different y-intercepts, you should be thinking right now, simultaneous equation. I'm going to go ahead and set up an equation that has variables on both sides. It's going to have 2 equations. So let's take a look at Carnival M. I'm going to underline Carnival M. It says it charges an entrance fee of $5 and 65 cents per ticket. Remember the other day we said we have these key words: per, every, and, each, a. So when we see those words and they come right after a number or right before it, and it says like per day, every day, an hour, each day, a ticket, you're going to be looking and going, okay, that's my unit rate. And the unit rate is the number that will always be multiplied to the variable x. then the number that's by itself, just like a one-time initial fee, it's always the y-intercept. And that's how you tell the difference between the two when you're creating your equation. Next it says Carnival P, going to underline it, charges an entrance fee of $10. That's going to be my y-intercept. And 45 cents per ticket. That one is going to be my unit rate, which is going to get my variable. How many tickets must be purchased in order for the total cost at Carnival M and Carnival P to be the same? I'm going to underline that 3 times because that tells you what symbol to put between the two equations. It says that it wants them to be the same. So let's start with Carnival M. Let's start with what we know. We know that Carnival M, and I'm just going to put CM, is going to be equal, because it says it has to be the same, that's where I get my equal sign, to Carnival P. So I'm going to put CP. So CM has to be equal to CP. Now that we got this statement made, this is our verb, this is like our word statement, right? We're saying what's going to occur. We're going to plug in our numbers for each one of these. Well, Carnival M will be on the left side of the equation, and Carnival P will be on the right side of the equation. So for M, it says it charges an entrance fee of $5 and 65 cents per ticket. So if we were to write that out, what we have is we have 0.65x, because it's 65 cents a ticket, plus the $5 equals, and CP, our Carnival P, is going to charge $10 entrance fee, that's our y-intercept, and 45 cents per ticket. So we have 0.45x, and then we have plus 10. Now some of you might be going, well, could I just said 5 plus 0.65x? You could have did that, and you could have said 10 plus 0.45x, but I like putting it this way because it reminds me of y equals mx plus b. I have my slope and I have my y-intercept. Now once I've got this set up, we just need to put it in numerical solve, solve for x, and we're going to know which one of these numbers it is. So let's go ahead and put that in our calculator. So go to calculate, hit enter, and then I want you to hit menu. You're going to go to option 3.1 for numerical solve, and we're going to put this in 0.65x plus 5 equals 0.45x plus 10, and then put comma x, because we want to solve for x. That's going to be the point in which they're the same. That's the point in which these two simultaneous equations will actually cross each other on a graph. And it gives us 25. So the correct answer in this case is A. Go ahead and pause this video and go on to the next problem and see if you can do it on your own. Alright, in problem number 8, it says the coordinate grid shows parallelogram PQRS. Parallelogram PQRS is rotated 90 degrees clockwise about the origin to create parallelogram PQRS prime. Which rule describes its transformation? So in this one, in some of these we're going to actually rotate the image, so in the pre-image, so that we can find our image. But in this case, we don't even need to do so. It's just telling us to find the rule. So can we recognize a rule for rotation? And so what I would tell you to remember is there are a couple things that stand out for rotations. First of all, when we're looking at a rotation, for every 90 degrees that we rotate, it says this is going to rotate 90 degrees, X and Y switches to Y and X. So every 90 degrees, X and Y, they switch. You turn it 90 degrees, X and Y becomes Y and X. You turn it another 90 degrees, and Y and X becomes X and Y, and so on and so on. So just knowing that, we know that since it says it's going to turn 90 degrees clockwise, we are looking for one of these answer choices that has the Y and the X swapped because it turned 90 degrees. So if we look right here, see which one shows Y and X. Okay, H and J both show Y and X swapped. So it can't be F and it can't be G. So now you got a 50-50 chance of getting it right, just by knowing the rule that every 90 degrees Y and X is going to flop back and forth. The next thing that we need to do is we need to also think about the quadrant that it's going to move to. Now, we started off in this quadrant, right? Over here, X is negative and Y is positive. Over here, X is positive and Y is positive. And if we move 90 degrees, right, we moved from quadrant 2 to quadrant 1, our x is going to go from a negative to a positive, right? Because that's your x and y value. This is your x and y value. I'll put that in there as an ordered pair. So how do we make a negative number turn positive? So think about it, right? If we multiply a negative to a positive, it gives us a negative. But if we multiply a negative to a negative, it gives us a positive. So since we're going from a negative to a positive, the only way to make that number change is to multiply it by a negative. That means that our x value is going to need to be multiplied by a negative sign. So out of these two, which one has a negative sign that we can multiply to our variable, an x? And you're right, you guessed it right, this does not have the sign, this one does. Therefore J is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try to do the next problem on your own. Alright, in problem number 9, it says the value of y varies directly with x. When you hear varies directly, I want you to be thinking it's just a proportional relationship. So we're looking at the equation y equals kx. What this means is that our y-intercept is 0, or that this graph goes through the origin. Then it says when y equals 75, x equals 1/2. What is the value of y when x equals 2 1/4? Okay, so we're trying to find what is the value of y when x is equal to 2 1/4. So in order to find that, we first need to find our equation. So the way we find our equation is they're giving us some key information. They told us that initially when y was 75, x was 1/2. So let's take a look at what we know. We can plug in for y, 75 is equal to k, which is our slope, right? That's going to be our constant of proportionality. So we need to find what k is, because k is going to help us create this equation so we can solve for that answer. Now it says that x was equal to 1/2 at that time. Here's the thing, we don't know what k is, but we know x was 1/2. We plugged in this number for it. And we know that y was 75. We need to find out what k is. Now you could do this by hand, or you could just use numerical solve and find out what k is. So let's go ahead and we're just going to do it the shortcut way. Let's find out what k is. We have menu, algebra, numerical solve, and we have 75 equals k times 1/2. And then we're going to put comma k. We want to find out what k is. So k is 150. So since k is 150, let's write that down. K is equal to 150. Now we can write our equation. We're going to use this k value in our equation. So our equation is y equals 150x. Now, and this is important because it said what is y, so we're looking for y. So I'm going to put a question mark. We want to know what is y when x, right here, this is our x, right, is 2 1/4. Now remember, when you put this in your calculator, you need to put it in as 2 plus 1/4. So let's go and rewrite this equation. We have y equals 150 times 2 plus 1/4. So once we work that out, it'll tell us what y is, and we'll have our answer. So let's go ahead and put that in our calculator. We have 150 times 2 plus 1/4. It gives us 675 over 2. Or if we go back to 675 over 2, if we want to make it a decimal, right? Let's see, our answer choices are not in decimal form. They have a whole number, but we need to know what whole number it is, right? So let's go ahead and put a decimal after either the 675 or the 2. And our whole number is 337. So our answer should be 337.5. And so if you look at your answer choices, only one of these has 337, and 1/2 is equal to 0.5. So B is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and go on to the next problem and see if you can solve it on your own. Alright, number 10. It says a triangular prism and its dimensions are shown in the diagram. What is the lateral surface area of this triangular prism in square centimeters? Notice it said lateral surface area. So we don't want the bases. We only want the distance around this shape. We don't want these bases. And when I say bases, I'm going to shade them in just a little bit. We don't want this triangle, and we don't want this triangle. And in a triangular prism, the triangles are always the base. So if we want to find out the lateral surface area for this, there's only a couple things that we need to know. And so let's go ahead and look at our formula chart right quick so that we know what our formula is for this. So we can go ahead and say, alright, let's look for surface area. It says it's a triangular prism, so a prism will use the formula for lateral surface area. Right here it says lateral, S equals PH. So let's write that down. So we know that we're going to have S is equal to P, which is the perimeter, times H, which is the height. So if you forgot how to find perimeter, just remember perimeter, and I'm going to redraw this triangle over here. If we want to find the perimeter of that triangle, imagine that you're walking around it, and it's just the total distance around the triangle if you were to walk all the way around it and end at the point that you started. So for the perimeter, we just need to add up all the sides of our triangle. Well, this side clearly states that it's 5 centimeters. So I'm going to do 5 plus this side, which is 6, plus this side over here, which if you look over here, they have it labeled on the back side, and it says it's also 5. And then we're going to multiply that. Notice that's why I put it in parentheses. Parentheses means to multiply. And we're going to multiply that to the height. Now the height is just the distance between the two bases. On a cylinder, it's the distance between the two circles, which are the base. On a rectangular prism, it's the distance between the two squares. In a triangular prism, it's the distance between the two triangles. So that distance is 8. So for H, we're going to put in an 8. And now we just need to multiply this out, and it'll give us our S. So we'll put that in our calculator real quick. You don't need to use numerical solve on this because you're just going to add these together in parentheses and then multiply it to this value. So let's go ahead and put 5 plus 6 plus 5, which is our perimeter, times 8, which is our height. Hit enter, and it gives us 128. So the correct answer on this problem is G, 128 centimeters squared. Go ahead and pause this video, move on to the next one, and see if you can answer it on your own. Alright, in problem number 11, it says Julie made 25 international long-distance phone calls to London last month. The scatter plot below shows the length and cost of each phone call she made. Which conclusion is best supported by the scatter plot? Well, first of all, before we even try to do anything, I think we should look at this and determine, does it have any type of relationship? So, do these dots follow a pattern? Do they follow closely to a line that we could draw through here? And I think you could look and see, if I drew a line like this, you'd have half and half on each side, but they don't follow closely to the line. They're far apart. If I drew a line from top to bottom, it would cut through it about the same. So in this case, there is no association. The dots are just everywhere. So with that being said, and that on our mind, let's look at which statement makes the most sense. As the length of the call increases, the cost of the call increases. Well, that's not true, because on this it doesn't follow a line. So if as the length of the call increased, the cost of the call would increase, would mean that this line that we're going up, as we go up right here in more minutes, we should have dots that kind of follow along. So A is not a good answer choice. Then we have, as the length of call increases, the cost of the call remains the same. Okay, well again, we would show some type of relationship, but that is not the case. B is incorrect. As the length of the call increases, the cost of the call decreases. Well, that would be a negative slope coming down, and that's not the case. So it's not going to be C. There is no relationship between the length of the call and the cost of the call. And this is true. These numbers are scattered out everywhere. So D is the correct answer. Notice it says no relationship. It's the same thing as no association. Alright, go ahead and pause this and try your next problem on your own. Alright, in problem number 12, It says, what are the slope and y-intercept of the graph of the linear function shown on a grid? So in this case, we want the slope and the y-intercept. So best thing to do is what we've practiced in class and what most of you become pretty good at. Let's go to our spreadsheet. They've given us 2 points. We just need to put those 2 sets of points in our spreadsheet, and then we can go ahead and graph it and get our equation. So I'm going to go down to spreadsheet, hit enter. Since I got multiple spreadsheets open, I'd always recommend that you delete those before trying anything. So then we're going to change A to X. We're going to change B to Y. For our first ordered pair, I'm going to use this first one to the left, -6 and 0. So I'm going to put -6 for X and 0 for Y. For the next one, I'm going to put 2 and -2. So I'm going to put a 2 and then a -2. Now that I've got that put in, I'm going to go ahead and hit my home button, go over to statistics, hit enter, and then we need to go over here to our y-axis, which is always to the left. Change that to Y, change the X at the bottom, hit enter. Then I want you to hit menu, option 461, which is analyze, regression, and then show linear mx plus b. And there's our equation. We have -0.25 x plus -1.5. Now remember, the -1.5, that's our y-intercept. So we know that that's going to be our y-intercept, so we can cancel out f and j because they have 6 as the y-intercept. So it's either going to be g or h. The next thing we need to do is figure out, well, what is -0.25? What value is that? And if you're not certain which one of these numbers is -0.25, I would recommend hitting the on button, going back up to calculate, and once you get there, you can actually convert -0.25 to a fraction by hitting menu. So you put in -0.25, hit menu, go to number. After number, go ahead and go to approximate to fraction. Hit enter twice, because the first time it's going to give you this little symbol right here. And hit enter again. And it's going to tell you that it's -1/4. So that tells you that H is the correct answer, because it has -1/4. Go ahead and pause this video and try your next problem on your own. Alright, in question 13, it says a preschool has a rectangular field and a rectangular playground that are similar in shape. Each dimension of the field is 3.2 times the corresponding dimensions of the playground. Which statement is true? Before attempting this problem, I think the best thing to do is just to kind of give you a visual, because just thinking about it with the words, I have trouble with it. I have to draw it out and think about it. So this is going to be the playground. We'll call it PG. And then we have another shape, right? So I'm going to draw a little bit bigger. And this is going to be the rectangular field. So I'm going to put RF. And it says they're similar in shape, so they're both rectangles, right? So that means that the sides of them are going to be similar lengths. They're just different ratios. It says each dimension of the field, so here's the field, is 3.2 times the corresponding dimension of the playground. In other words, if this is the length and this is the width, then this is the length and the width. And that would mean this one is 3.2 times L and 3.2 times W, because it's 3.2 times bigger. And it says it wants to know, with this information, which statement is true. The area of the field is 6.4 times the area of the playground. Okay, when it talks about area, you got to think about, how do we find area? And we find area by squaring the length. In other words, if this length right here was 2, if we want to find this length was 2, right? We'd say, well, if we want to find the area of it, we would say the length times the width, right? And so we would say 2 squared. So you're going for area. I want you to always think area is equal in, and we'll just use centimeters for example, in squared units. The number has to be squared. Perimeter, on the other hand, is just regular units. We just multiply it. So for instance, if we wanted to find the distance in this length right here, to find the perimeter, we would just multiply 3.2 times that value. If we want to find area, we're going to have to square that value. So when it says the area of the field is 6.4 times the amount, well, 6.4, you're just multiplying 3.2 times 2. So that's not going to be correct, because that's not how we find area. We square area. It says the area of the field is 10.24 times the area of the playground. Okay, well on that one, let's see. If we took 3.2 that we have here, because we say it's 3.2 times bigger, and we are finding area, if we did 3.2 squared, what would that give us? So I look at it and go, okay, well let's try it. Let's do 3.2 squared, and it gives us 10.24. So B is the correct answer. Area is found by squaring any number, and if it's 3.2 times larger, then we'd have to square that number, and it would give us 10.24. Go ahead and pause this question and go to the next answer and see if, or the next question, and see if you can answer it on your own. Alright, in problem number 14, it says which function is best represented by this graph. Well, I think the easiest way to do this is to graph the function and just compare the picture. That's one way you could do it. You could also look at this and you could find the points on it. For instance, here's 4, 1. And then I could find another point. Let's see. Here's one at 2, 2. You could put those two in your spreadsheet and you could find which equation matches. That's one way you could do it if you're good at locating the points on the graph. The other way is you could just put each one of these one at a time into your graph it, and see which one matches. Notice we have a y-intercept of 3 right here, right? And then, let's see, let me pull my calculator over. We're going to compare each one of these to the graph one at a time. Now to graph this, you're going to go to your home menu and then go to the graph and function. Hit enter. And if you want to get rid of one that's already graphed, hit delete, delete, delete. And then hit yes, you want to delete it. Then I want you to come over and hit the tab button right here. It's going to put this function up here. That f of 1x, remember that just means y. So that's your y component that you have here. All you need to put in here on the other side of the equal sign are these values that come after it. So let's do f first. It's 1/2 x plus 6. So I'm going to hit control divide and put 1/2, and I'm going to put x plus 6. If I hit enter, there's my graph. Does this graph look anything like this one? And even if you ignored the fact that the y-intercept isn't correct, because right, we said the y-intercept's at 3. This y-intercept's at 6. That's what that last value stands for. But even if we ignored that and just looked at the pictures, it's obviously way different. So we know our answer can't be F. So I'm going to hit delete, 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 enter. I'm going to hit tab, and I'm going to put my next one. I have negative 2x plus 3. So negative 2x plus 3. Hit enter. Here's our graph. Now, why this does look similar, it does look similar. It looks like it's steeper. If you look, this one looks like it's not as steep. And if you wanted to check the points, you can actually hit, I'm going to show you what to hit. You can hit control and the letter T. Now keep in mind, when you do that, in order to get out, you have to hit control T again. And this shows us our points. It says when x is 1, y is 1. Well, let's see if that's true. When x is 1 right here, y should be 1. In other words, the graph should go through this point, 1, 1. Does our graph go through that point? And the answer is no. It does not go through 1, 1. So it can't be G. I'm going to hit control and I'm going to hit T to get out of my table. And I'm going to hit delete 3 times. I'm going to delete that one. I'm not even going to try 2x plus 6 because we already learned that 6 is not the right y-intercept. So 2x plus 6, that's an impossibility. So we're just going to cross it out. So it's going to have to be J. And we're going to confirm that's our answer by putting it into our calculator. Let's hit tab. We're going to put negative, control divide, and we'll put our 1 over 2. And then we'll put our x and plus 3. Hit enter. Okay, this graph looks like this graph. If you wanted to double check by looking at the points, we're going to hit Control and then the letter T. T as in Tom. Once we do that, notice if I go back over here to graph, it has my points. It says that whenever where x is 2, y is going to be 2. And that's what that means. There's your x, and that f of x, it just means y. So when x is 2, y is 2. And if you look right here, we said when x is 2, y is 2. That's how we got that 0.22. If you look, when x is 4, y is 1. So when x is 4, y is 1. So therefore we know that it is the correct graph. I'm going to hit Control T to get out. Hit delete 3 times. Delete this graph. We know that J is the correct answer. But now keep in mind, you could have also found it by just finding 2 points on the line and putting it into a spreadsheet, and you would have been able to also find the correct answer. So do whichever way you prefer, but I think in this particular case, graphing it is quite easy. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out the next problem on your own. On problem 15, it says the set designer for a play painted some background scenery on a large piece of plywood. He used a 13-foot long pole to hold the piece of plywood upright, as shown in the diagram below. What is h, the total height in feet of the piece of plywood? So let's take a look. We're trying to find h. Notice that at the top of this pole, right, I'm going to draw a line right there. It's telling us that it's 2 feet above that point. So all we really need to do is recognize that this is a right triangle. And when we're using a right triangle, we're going to be using the Pythagorean Theorem. Keep that in mind. To find the height of this leg. Once we find its height, we simply need to take that height and add it to the 2 feet that extends above it, and we'll have our answer for the total height of this piece of plywood. So let's go ahead and take a look. If I go to the corner of my right angle sign, make my arrow, that tells me this is C. Therefore, this must be A and B. These are my 2 legs because they touch the right angle sign. And so we need to go ahead and use our Pythagorean Theorem formula, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. For a, I'm going to plug in my h squared. For b, I'm going to put in 5 squared. And for c, I'm going to plug in my 13 squared. So once I get the answer to h, I'll simply need to add that additional 2 feet to it, so plus 2, and I'll have my final answer. So let's go ahead and put that into our calculator. So if I'm going to go over to calculate, and I'm going to hit menu, algebra, numerical solve, and I'm going to go ahead and put in h squared plus 5 squared equals 13 squared comma h, and he gives me 12. So h is equal to 12. Then I got to remember to add, right, because this is 12 from here all the way to here. So then I got to remember to add this 2 feet on there, right, because we want to get the height of the total board. So that's going to give me 14. So my answer is 14 feet, and I would bubble in 14. Go ahead and pause this video and go ahead and go to your next problem and see if you can solve it on your own. On number 16, it says which table contains only corresponding x values and y values where the value of y is 3 more than the quotient of x and 2. So let's go ahead and box our numbers. It says that the value of y, so y is going to equal to 3 more than the quotient of x and 2. Now some of you may have forgot what the word quotient means. You learned that a very long time ago. When we talk about quotient, we're talking about division. And whenever it says the quotient of some number, the first number it says will be the numerator, the second number will be the denominator. So what we're saying is when it says a quotient of x and 2, I have a quotient of x and 2, so x divided by 2, and it says it's going to be 3 more than that. So I'm just going to add 3 to it. So whatever the quotient of x and 2 is, plus 3, will be my answer for y. That gives me a non-proportional equation. So now that I've got this equation, I can simply plug in the values in my table, and I would just start with the first one. So notice the first one, the x value is always 7. And then C, if I get the correct y value. So let me show you what I mean. So y is going to be equal to, all these have a 7 for x, right? So I'm going to put, instead of putting x, I'm going to plug in a 7 for x over 2 plus 3. Now I could work this out by hand, or we could just put it into our calculator, which I think is always more efficient, so why not use it? So let's do the quotient of 7 over 2 plus 3 equals 13 over 2. And of course, notice these are all in decimal form, so I'm not sure what 13 over 2 is. So what we could do is we could go back to it and put a decimal after that 2, hit enter, and it gives me 6.5. So what I'm looking for is that when x is 7, y is equal to 6.5. So let's take a look at them. When x is 7, y is 5. Well, that's incorrect. Can't be f. When x is 7, y is 3.5. Well, that's a big difference. When x is 7, y is 6.5. Okay, this one's correct. Now I'm going to check the last one just to make sure before, because this might be the only answer that has 6.5. It might not be. 7 and 0.5. Okay, well that rules that one out. So G is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and then go on to the next problem and try to solve it on your own. Alright, number 17. It says a ball shaped like a sphere has a radius of 2.7 meters. So I'm going to underline radius, that's a key word. I'm going to box 2.7 centimeters. Which measurement is closest to the volume of the ball in cubic inches? So if we looked at our formula chart, we would see what our formula is. If we go down here and we look at under volume of a sphere, it gives us the formula 4 over 3 pi r cubed, which means to the power of 3. So we're going to use that formula. Let's go ahead and write that down. We have V is equal to 4 over 3 pi r to the power of 3. So they're giving us the radius, and the radius, remember, that is our r. So all we need to do is plug that value in and we can check our answer. So 4 over 3 times pi times my radius, which is 2.7. I'm going to plug that in parentheses, to the power of 3. We can put that in our calculator and see what we get. Put your fraction bar, and then we have 4 over 3. Make sure you click to the right one time to get outside of the denominator, and then it's going to be times pi times our radius, which is 2.7. And you could put it in parentheses, or you could just put times. It's up to you, either way. And then hit the up arrow, the caret key, right? And we're talking about on our calculator, that up arrow right there gives you that box to put in your power. And then hit enter. And it's going to give us 82.448. So now that we got our answer, we want to see what answer is closest to 82.448. And if you look at it, D is the closest answer. It's been rounded for us. And that is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and see if you can do the next one on your own. Alright, question number 18 says Alejandra and her family are discussing how to pay for her college education. The cost of tuition at the college that Alejandra wants to attend is $9,000 per year. Alejandra's parents will pay 85%, let's box that, of the tuition cost every year, and she will pay the rest. Alejandra has 1 year to save enough money to attend her first year of college. What is the minimum amount of money she should save every month in order to reach her goal? Okay, well, let's think about it, right? She wants to reach her goal of $9,000 because she wants to be able to pay for her first year of college. She needs $9,000. The first thing we need to do is figure out, because her parents are paying 85% of that first year of each year's cost, what is 85% of $9,000? Because once we figure that out, we can go ahead and subtract that amount from $9,000 and see how much Alejandra is actually going to have to pay out of her own pocket. So to figure that out, I need to do 9,000 times 85%. Now remember, right, I need to convert this percent to a decimal in order to get the correct answer. But that's where we're going to start. So let's go over here. So I'm going to do 85%. I'm going to hit my percent sign, and I'm going to convert it to a decimal. And let's see, 85, put a decimal after it, so it doesn't give me a fraction, and it is 0.85. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. I'm going to scratch this out. So instead of 85%, we have 0.85 times 9,000, and we'll see what that is. So I'll do 9,000 times 0.85, and that gives me 7,650. So now that we know that they're going to pay $7,650, we need to subtract that from the 9,000 so we can see how much is Alejandro responsible for. So we're going to subtract this value. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So we have 9,000 minus 7,650. So she's going to be responsible for 13,500. Now it says, what is the minimum amount of money that she should save every month in order to reach her goal? It also told us that she has 1 year to save. So 1 year, I want you to think about this, 1 year is equal to 12 months. Right? We know there's 12 months in a year. So that means that she gets to save, she'll save 12 payments. So all we need to do is divide that 1350 by 12, and we'll know exactly how much she has to save. So if we do 1350 divided by 12 payments, that'll be how much she has to save each month. So let's go ahead and put that in our calculator and work it out. So 1350 divided by 12. I'm going to put a decimal after it because we want to have a decimal value. She needs to save $112.50 per month. And if you look at our answer choices, this is what we got, and H is the correct answer. So I know this is a lot of steps. We have to really think a lot about this. This is not one of those quick questions where we can just plug it into a formula. When you get one like this, look at what it's saying. Think about the steps that you need to take in order to get to the root of the answer, and give it your best. So go ahead and pause this video at this time and try to do the next problem on your own. Alright, in problem number 19, it says the coordinates of the vertices of a quadrilateral are P, 1, 2, R, 1, 4, S, 3, 4, and T, 4, 2. Quadrilateral PRST is reflected over the y-axis to create quadrilateral PRST prime. Which rule describes this transformation? Now I'm going to give you a tip. When you're dealing with the transformations, don't worry about trying to draw the entire image. Pick one point, reflect, especially when it's a reflection. Reflect that one point, see what changed, and then you'll be able to determine what rule is necessary. Let me give you an example. Let's just go with P. It says P is going to be at 1, 2. So I'm going to plot this one point. I'm going to start at origin, which is 0, 0, go over 1, up 2. So that's point 1, 2, which is P. And it says it's going to be reflected over the y-axis. So you need to know what the y-axis is, right? And we actually made quite a few of those in class, so I'm sure you got it down. That's my y-axis right there that I've highlighted. And we're going to reflect it over the y, which means it's literally going to just jump over the y. So over here, it's out from the y-axis one space. So from this side, it's going to be out from the y-axis one space if we reflect it. I want you to just think about a mirror image. So instead of being, so this is going to be P prime, and instead of being 0.12, it's actually going to be -1, +2. -1, +2. Now we reflected this one point. That's all we need to do to be able to get this answer right. And I want you to think about it. Over here, x and y was positive, positive. Our x value was positive, our y value was positive. On this side, when we go over to quadrant 2, our x become negative. Look at the x values, they're all negative. The y is still positive though. So over here, our x and y values changed to negative, positive. So what we need to do is we need to find a rule where y stayed the same but x turned negative. So let's take a look at our options here. Y stayed the same. If y was positive here, it's positive over here. So what we're looking for, let's rewrite this. If I move that sign with it, we should have negative x and positive y. So it can't be A, negative x and positive y. B is the correct answer. If you notice, it couldn't have been this one because that's a rotation, right? When the x and y flip, that's a rotation when x and y flip. And it says it was reflected, so you could automatically cancel out C and D because of that, just in case you continue to go on to check your further answers. So B is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video, try to do the next problem on your own, and we'll go from there. Alright, this particular problem, number 20, says which situation represents a proportional relationship? When we say proportional, that means it goes through the origin at 0, 0. In other words, the equation is y equals kx, k being your slope, and then you have x, and there's no y-intercept, or what we would say is the y-intercept is equal to 0 because it's going through origin, which is 0. So what we want to do is look for a verbal statement where there is no y-intercept. In other words, we want to find a unit rate only. If we find a unit rate and some initial value or some discounted value, that is going to be a y-intercept, and that cannot be the correct verbal statement. So let's look through each one of these, and we're going to be looking for our keywords for our unit rate, which is per, each, every, and, or a. Right? So we want to be looking at that. Some value per, or some value each, or every, or an. So let's take a look at F, and we're going to see if we can rule this one out. If we can find a y-intercept. We find a y-intercept, we cancel it out. It's not an option. The cost of purchasing a basket of oranges for $1.30 per pound. That gets our variable, so I'm going to put an X on it. So we're good. Plus $5. That plus $5, that's a y-intercept. That's non-proportional, so it can't be F. The cost of purchasing peaches for $7 per box. Okay, there's our unit rate. That gets our X. Of peaches with a delivery charge of $3. That's a standalone value. That has to be a y-intercept, so we can cancel that one out. The cost of purchasing grapefruit for $1.80 per pound with a coupon for $1 off. Okay, $1 off, that's going to be a y-intercept. This is our X, so we can cancel this one out. So that tells you that it has to be J, and let's see why it's J. The cost of purchasing apples for $1.75 per pound, that's a unit rate, it gets the X, plus a shipping fee of 16 cents per pound. Notice in this instance, it didn't just say plus a shipping fee of 16 cents, it says 16 cents per pound. That gets an X. In other words, in this case, we have two unit rates. And what we could do, if you're wondering, say, well, we can't have two unit rates, right? We're just supposed to have one. Well, what we could do with two unit rates, to simplify things, we could just add them together, right? And that would give us $1.91 times X, and it would be a single unit rate because we combined them. So J is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. Number 21 says Jamie used a microscope to measure the diameter of a hair. She found that the diameter of the hair was 0.000072 meter. How is this number written in scientific notation? Okay, well, we got to remember our rule. If our number is less than 1, we will have a negative exponent. So if our number, and I'm going to put the number, is less than 1, the exponent is negative. On the other hand, if the number is greater than 1, the exponent is positive. Well, this number is less than 1 because we don't have any numbers that are in front of the decimal. They're all behind the decimal. So anything that doesn't have a negative exponent, we can cancel out. Therefore, B and C are not possibilities. The next thing we can do is remember our rule that what we're going to do is we want to move this decimal over all the way until there's only one digit that's between 1 and 9 in front of it. So let's move it over, and we're going to count how many times we move it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we moved it 5 times. Now we moved it to the right, and that tells us that our exponent is negative, but we also knew that because we know any number less than 1 is always going to have a negative exponent. So if we moved it to the right 5 times, that changes our number to 7.2, and then we're going to multiply it to a power of 10, right? We want to multiply it by 10, and then our exponential power was 5, so it's going to be to the power of negative 5. And when we're looking at this, our answer must be A. Go ahead and pause this video, go to the next problem, and see if you can complete it on your own. Problem 22. Triangle PQR and RST are similar right triangles. Which proportion can be used to show the slope of PR is equal to the slope of RT? Well, there's a couple different ways we can do this. Again, on the other video, we hadn't had much time to spend on this particular topic because we have so short amount of time in summer school. And so what I would like for you to do is I'm going to show you the easy route in order to get this answer. What we need to do is locate all the y values. And this will always be able to answer these problems successfully if you follow this method. And it looks like our y values are only in 3 different locations. So our y values are at 7, 3, and negative 5. What that means for us is the numerator, I'm going to write the word numerator, should only have those 3 values. Our denominator should only have x values. So let's go ahead and take a look and see which one of these matches that criteria. We're looking for numbers 7, 3, and negative 5 in the numerator. So here we have 3, okay, we have a 3 right there. 7, so we have a 7 right there. Negative 5, we have a negative 5 right there. And then a 3. So we're good. So F is definitely a correct answer. Now if you wanted to go through and check the rest, just for grins, we can check them and see does it have these 3 numbers, and we're going to find that it doesn't. G has 3 minus negative 4. Notice there is no negative 4. That's a y value. So that's not an option. So it can't be G. Again, H has a negative 4. Can't be H. J has a negative 4. Can't be J. Now, did we set up the proportion properly? No, we didn't. The idea is to set up the proportion. That is what was taught during the year. But just to give you a quick way in order to get the correct answer on this particular problem, to give you an edge, this is the best way to address it. So, go ahead and pause this video, go to the next problem, and see if you can answer it on your own. Problem number 23. The scatter plot shows the average number of hours each of 13 people spends at work every week, and the average number of hours each of them spends on recreational activities every week. Based on a scatter plot, what is the best prediction of the average number of hours a person spends at work every week if that person spends an average of 10 hours on recreational activities every week? Well, I'm going to move this up so we can see our answer choices here real quick. The next thing I want to do is I want to make a trend line, because you know how these work, and we've talked about this before. Typically the way the scatter plot works is the dots will never reach over to the area you want them to reach to so that you can get an accurate answer. So best thing to do is put a trend line. It's going to give us our most accurate answer by doing it that way. And when you make a trend line, you're going to take that little makeshift ruler that you made out of your paper, and you want to try to cut this data in half. In other words, we want about half the amount of dots on top side and then half the amount of dots on the bottom side. So let's take a look at what that'll look like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 dots. So let's try to see if we can get 6 on top and maybe a half dot. So let's see, we have right there, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not enough. Come down a little bit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's see, we're going to have some that are halfway. So let's go ahead. I'm going to draw a line right here. We can always redraw a line if it didn't come out as good as we wanted. We're trying to cut the data in half, and if you look, that roughly cuts the data in half pretty well. So there's my line. So now that I got my trend line, we're going to actually find the value that it's having us look at. And it says, make a prediction of the average number of hours a person spends at work every week if that person spends an average of 10 hours on recreational activities. So we're looking for 10 hours of recreational activities. Alright, so now I'm just going to take a look at it real closely. We're going to match up that 10. So if you notice, 10 is right here. So if I come across, right there, kind of made a squiggly line. It looks like it's right at 60 or a little bit above 60. So because of that, and I don't see 60 as an answer, I'm going to go ahead and run it back through one more time, just try to make sure I got it as best as possible. And I guess looking at it, I could curve it up just a hair. And sometimes it's good to go back through it a second time and just double check. And I'm thinking this probably looks as best as it can be. So somewhere definitely past 60 will get me right in the middle of that data. And so you look at what number is in between maybe 60 and 65. And the closest answer out of all of these is 65. So D is the correct answer. Regardless of how I did my line, to be 50 would be way off down here. 33 is way down here. And 85 would be way over here. So you can imagine the only one that comes any whatsoever close to these two particular lines is 65. And that is your best answer. So pause the video and try the next one on your own. On number 24, it says 4 triangles are shown. Based on these triangles, which statement is true? So let's take a look at all 4 statements and all 4 triangles. And it says, based on these triangles, which statement is true? And F says, W is equal to 75 degrees. So let's take a look at that. So it's saying this is 75 degrees. We're going to see if that makes sense. And it says, because 45 plus 60 equals 105. Okay, so they got 45 plus 60, and that gives us 105. That's true. And 180 minus 105 equals 75. Well, 180 minus 105 equals 75, and that's true. But if we added 60 and 40 and subtracted it from 180, right, we're looking at the total interior angles right here. That would give us 75. And then what we would need to do is say, okay, well, if Z is 75, if I go all the way around to the other side, it's 180. So if I did 180 minus 75, does that give me 75? And the answer is no, it doesn't. 75 from 180 gives me 105. That would mean that W must be 105 and not 75. Remember, a straight angle is 180 degrees. Also, the sum of all interior angles of a triangle are 180. And that's what we're using to try to figure out what this value is. And if you're, so in other words, what we did is we said, okay, well, this angle's 45. And this angle's 45, or this angle's 60 degrees. And that does give us 105 degrees. So then if we take that 105 and let me cancel this out real quick. If we take that 105 and we subtract it from 180, then that's going to give us 75 degrees, which is this angle right here. And if we know this straight angle all the way across till we form a straight line is 180, then we can say the 180 minus 75 gives us 105. So if this is 75, this angle here has to be 105. So let's try to see what statement supports that idea. W is 105. Well, that's exactly what we got, because 180 minus 45 plus 60 equals 75. That's true. And 180 minus 75 equals 105. That's true. So there's no need to look any further. G is the correct answer based off of us using our sum theorem, where we say the sum of a triangle's angles, interior angles, is 180 degrees, and then using the definition of a straight angle in order to figure out this exterior angle of the triangle. So go ahead, hit pause, and see if you can go ahead and answer the next question on your own. 25 says, which set of ordered pairs represents y as a function of x? So we want to know which one is a function. So we want to find out which one is a function. Which means, if it's a function, that there are no repeating x values. So let's see which one meets that criteria. I would go ahead and just scratch out my y values. That way you don't even get mixed up. Remember, in an ordered pair you have x first and then y. So I'm going to scratch out all the second values, and then we'll just go through them real quick and see which row doesn't have any numbers that repeats. So we have 2, 4, 6, 8. None of those repeat, so A is a function. Here we have 0, 1, 1, 2. Both of these ones repeat, so that one's not a function. Here we have 3 repeating, so that's not a function. And here we have 1 repeating, so that's not a function. So A is the correct and only answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try to do the next problem on your own. Problem number 26 says circle I was dilated with the origin as the center of dilation to create circle 2. Which rule best represents the dilation applied to circle 1 to create circle 2? Okay, well let's kind of shade this in. Circle 1 was this tiny little circle in the middle, and then circle 2 is this big circle that's all around. Now if we think about our rules with dilations, it's scale factors that are less than 1 shrink the shape, and scale factors that are greater than 1 for dilation grow the shape, make it bigger. So 1 and 1, so less than 1 and greater than 1. So we know if the circle went from a small circle to a big circle, we're dealing with a scale factor that's bigger than 1. So we know it can't be less than 1. So let's go down here first of all and let's look for anything that's a dilation. So if we look at F and G, right, the rule for a dilation is we are simply multiplying a scale factor, and we'll call that scale factor K. So let's pretend that SF is equal to K times X and K times Y. So we're looking for a scale factor times X and a scale factor times Y. That's how we make it grow or shrink. So if we're looking over here, we have 3/8 times X and 3/8 times Y. Well, if you don't know what 3/8 is, if you don't know if it's less than or greater than 1, you can always go to your calculator, right? And you can put in 3/8, put a decimal after the 8, and see, is that number greater or less than 1? And that number is less than 1. Because of that, it cannot be F. So even though this is a dilation, it would make the circle shrinking it smaller, because that number that it's being multiplied to, each one of these variables, is less than 1. So let's look at the next one, G. It says 8/3x. Well, that is a dilation. And if you don't know what 8/3 is, right, we can go to our calculator and say, okay, is that greater than 1? And it is 2.66667. So yes, G is greater than 1. It is definitely a suitable answer. Now, maybe let's double check the other two, because maybe that number isn't what it actually grew by. And we can always check it by multiplying that scale factor to the ordered pair. But before going there, let's just rule out these other two options. This one says we're adding a number to X and we're adding a number to Y. This one says we're subtracting a number to X and subtracting it from Y. These two options are not even dilations. They're translations. Remember, translations are slides where we just move the object. We keep it the same size and orientation, we just slide it over, up or down, left or right. And since it's translations, you can automatically rule those out. They can't make the shape change its size. G is the best answer. Go ahead and pause this video. Try the next problem. 27. The manager of a restaurant recorded how many people were in different groups of customers and how much those groups spent on their food and beverages. The scatter plot below shows the data she recorded. Based on a scatter plot, about how much money would a group of 10 people be expected to spend on food and beverages at this restaurant? Okay, before we make that prediction, once again, I think it's always a good idea to draw you a trend line, because if you don't, it's real easy to get it wrong. So we want about the same amount of dots on top as we do on bottom, and I'm going to kind of just eyeball it. It looks like it's about right there to me. I'm going to put my line. So I have about, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on bottom, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 on top. So it's pretty close, 10 on bottom, 9 on top. It cuts through a piece of some of them, so this should be pretty accurate. And it says, based on a scatter plot, how much money would a group of 10 people be expected to spend on food and beverages? Well, if we're at 10, right, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line up here from 10. And if I were to continue my line on, it would hit somewhere around, it looks like maybe 130, 135. So in this case, A is the correct answer, 135. Go Go ahead and pause this video. Try the next problem. Number 28. Which statement best describes the mapping? The mapping represents y as a function of x because each y value corresponds to exactly one x value. Well, let's take a look at it. We have -1, 0, 2, and 3. Notice there's no double lines coming off of an x value, so x doesn't repeat. So this is a function. And it says right here that it is a function. But notice it says because each y value corresponds to exactly one x value. So let's remember, I want you to think about it. Are we concerned about x? Are we concerned about y? And I'm sure you remember that we are concerned with x. So because it says because each y value corresponds to exactly one x value, we're going to say that that's false. We're not worried about the y, we're worried about the x. G says the mapping does not represent y as a function of x because two of the x values correspond to the same y value. Well, we just said it was a function because none of these x values repeat, so it can't be G. It's trying to say that it's not a function. H says the mapping represents y as a function of x. That part's correct. Because each x value corresponds to exactly one y value. And that is a true statement. That's what we want. We want each x value to correspond to exactly one y value. That is the definition of a function. So go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. 29 states, a cylinder and its dimensions are shown below. One equation for calculating the volume of a cylinder is V equals big B times H. It's given us the formula, where B represents the area of the base of the cylinder. Which expression can be used to find the value of B in square centimeters for the cylinder? Well, it told us that B was the area of the base, and it's big B times H. So remember the area of the base, right? Our base is this shape right up here, and it's a circle. So if we forgot for a moment, we could always look back at our chart and recognize that if we find the area of a circle, it's going to give us the formula pi r squared. In other words, when we're trying to find the area of a cylinder, we're going to have pi r squared, which represents big B, times h, which represents the height. And that's what we're looking for. We want to find something that looks like this, pi r squared times h. Now notice they actually give us the radius, it's right here, and they give us the height. So we have these two values, but here they're just telling us to find the value of big B. So we don't have to worry about the height right now, but we do need to worry about the radius because we need it to find B, the area of the base. So I'm going to bring down my pi r squared, which does represent my B, right? We said that right there represents B. And I'm going to plug in for r my radius, which is 12.1. So I have pi times 12.1 squared. And I'm going to look for the answer that most closely resembles this. And if you look right here, A matches it perfectly. So A is the correct answer. Question 30 says 3 groups of students use different methods to estimate the diagonal length of a patio in feet. The results were 4 square root of 13, 14 and 2/5, and 14.33 feet. Which list shows the diagonal lengths in order from greatest to least? So we want to go from the biggest number to the smallest number. So keep that in mind, right? We're going to go largest to smallest. Now there's 2 different ways you could do this. You could convert each one of these in your calculator to its decimal form. Of course the last one is already done. And then you could compare them and order them. The other thing you could do, which I think at this point, since a lot of you have gotten good at spreadsheet, is just use their spreadsheet to order them. And we want to go from largest to smallest. Keep that in mind. So I'm going to go down to my spreadsheet. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and delete it real quick. Go back in. Going to change this to X. And let's take a look. We have 4 and the square root of 13. And then we have 14. I'm going to put these in parentheses. 14 plus 2 over 5. And then our last one is 14.33. Then I'm going to go home, click over and go to statistics. I'm going to go down to the bottom and change this to X, and it's going to order them. Now, this is where I said you got to keep in mind earlier when we started this, we had one that was least from greatest, and the least is on the left, the greatest is on the right. You can tell that because you can see that these numbers increase as it moves to the right. But we want to go greatest to least. So when I'm checking them, I want to put this number first, the one that's on the far right. It's 4 square root of 13. So if I look down here, there's only one that starts out with 4 square root of 13, and that is J. So this one made it real easy for us because of that, and the final answer is J. Go ahead and pause this video and go to the next problem. Number 31. The model represents an equation. What value of x makes the equation true? So first of all, we have a model of an equation. So I think the easiest way to handle this is to convert it into an equation with variables on both sides, and then we can use numerical solve to solve it. First of all, let's look at this one. We have 3 negative x values. So we're going to write negative 3x, because there's 3 negative x's. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 1 values. So 10 ones is just plus 10. I'm going to bring down my equal sign. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 x's. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have minus 8. Now that we have this, just put it in numerical solve to solve for x, and we'll have our answer. So let's bring our calculator over. We're going to go up to calculate, hit menu, option 3, 1, and we're going to do negative 3x plus 10 equals 5x minus 8. And then I'm going to put comma x, because I want to solve for x. And it gives me 2.25. And that is my answer that I would bubble in. Positive 2.25. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. Question 32. The diagram below shows the side view of a ramp used to help load and unload a moving van. Which measurement is closest to the length of the ramp in feet? So hopefully when you look at this, you recognize this is the Pythagorean Theorem. And if we go to our formula chart, we have the Pythagorean Theorem right here. And A and B are the legs, and C is the hypotenuse. So let's go ahead and write that formula down. We have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. My A value and my B value are going to be the legs. Notice if we go to the right angle and draw an arrow from it, it always points to our hypotenuse, which is going to be the length of the ramp, which is what we're trying to find. So now we just need to plug in our numbers. For A, I'm going to plug in my 3 feet squared. For B, 9 squared. And then C squared. Put this in numerical solve, and we'll have the length of our ramp. So let's go and put that in. We have menu, algebra, numerical solve, 3 squared plus 9 squared equals C squared. And then put a comma C and hit enter. And it gives us 9.48683. So 9.48683. So the closest answer to 9.48 would be 9.5. So H is the correct answer. Pause this video and try to do the next one on your own. Number 33 states, which representation of a transformation on a coordinate grid does not preserve congruence? So it's not going to keep a congruent shape. Well, there is only one out of all the different transformations, there's only one that does not preserve congruence, and it is a dilation. We've already dealt with one of those a couple of times in this particular lesson, and remember, a dilation is always represented by some value, which is a scale factor, which we'll say it's called K, is the scale factor, being multiplied to the variable. So kx and ky. That means k times x, a scale factor times x, and a scale factor times y. So all you have to do is look at these four options and say which one do we have some value being multiplied to x and y. And you should recognize that that answer is A. For B, we're adding. This is actually a translation. Let's go ahead and fill these out, because this is a good way for you to be able to recognize these different algebraic rules. That's a dilation. That's a translation. This one right here is a reflection. And the one down here where we swapped y and x is a rotation. Go ahead and pause the video and attempt to do the next problem on your own. Number 34. A tree in Dante's neighborhood grew 18 inches in the first 2 years after it was planted. If the tree continues to grow at the same rate, which graph best represents the growth rate of the tree in inches per year? Okay, well, let's take a look at the facts. It grew 18 inches in the first 2 years. So first of all, we're looking for a graph that's going to have 2 matched up with 18 on our graph. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at them. Here we have 2 and 36. So that can't be right. It can't be F, because in 2 years it didn't grow 36, it grew 18. So this graph, this tree is growing much faster than Dante's tree. Here we have 2 and 18, and it does match up, but there's an issue. Notice this graph goes perfectly vertical. That means that this tree in 2 years, not only did it grow 18 feet, but it grew 27, 36, all the way up to 90, and even past that. So this is like Jack and the Beanstalk. This tree is growing into the heavens. So we know that's not a possibility, because we're looking for a tree that over time it grows a little bit over and over again, right? We're looking for something that has a slope that's not infinite, or what we call undefined. So it's not H. If we look at the bottom two, in 2 years, it grows 18 feet, or 18 inches. So if you look right here, this matches up perfect. So G is the correct answer. And if we looked at this final one of why it wouldn't work, here it says in 2 years, instead of growing 18, it's grown 72. So again, this tree right here is growing at a much faster rate than this one over here. G is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. Number 35. An artist joined 3 square regions at their vertices to create the figure shown in the diagram. The artist will use small congruent square tiles to cover each region without any gaps or overlaps. Based on the information, which statement is true? The number of tiles needed to cover region X, that's this region right here, is the same as the number of tiles needed to cover Y and Z. That's this region and this region. Now remember when we talked about earlier, what did I tell you? I said the 2 little boxes equal the big box. And that's because the 2 little boxes are box A squared and B squared. And the big one, right, was C squared. So A is not correct. The next one says the number of tiles needed to cover region Y, that's another little box, is the same as the number of tiles needed to cover both X and Z. So that's like saying that B squared is equal to A plus C squared. We know that's not true. The number of tiles needed to cover region Z, that's the big box, is the same as the number of tiles needed to cover both X and Y. Well, that's true. We know that the big box is equal to the little boxes, right? Because A squared plus B squared are always equal to C squared. So C is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and go on to the next problem and complete it. Number 36 says Mr. Leonard is renting a car for 1 day. The table below shows the total amount he will be charged for the car based on the number of miles he drives. Which equation best represents C, the number of dollars Mr. Leonard should be charged for driving M miles? On this problem, the first thing I want you to do is just put it into spreadsheet. They're giving us sets of ordered pairs in the table, so let's go ahead and do that. and then we can see which equation matches up with what we come up with. Remember to go ahead and delete that spreadsheet, the previous one. I'm going to change A to X, and I'm going to change B to Y. And then we're going to plug in our numbers. So I'm going to use the first two. I think that's always the easiest thing to do. So I'm going to put in 5 for X, and we're going to go ahead and put in 3050 for Y. Then we're going to put in 10 for X and $31 for Y. I'm going to hit home, go over to statistics, hit enter, and then we're going to go to the left side and convert that to Y. So that's going to be our Y axis. Go down to the bottom, we're going to make that X, and then I'm going to hit menu and go options 4, 6, 1, hit enter, and here is my equation. I should have 0.1x plus 30. So let's see which one of these matches up. 0.1x plus 30. This is 0.1m plus 30. So F matches. If you look at this one, this is 30m. Well, 30m is not 0.1m. 0.50m, well, that's not 0.1. And 30m, again, that's not 0.30. Even if you look at the y-intercept, right, it's plus 30. That would tell you that your options were only either H or C. Those are the only two that had a y-intercept of 30. Then you go back to your slope and say, well, it's 0.1, not 0.5. So it's got to be F. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. Number 37 says, which list shows the numbers below in order from least to greatest? Okay, well, in this particular problem, what we're going to want to do, you could convert each one of those numbers into a decimal form and order them, or you could just go to spreadsheet. So if you go to spreadsheet, and I'm going to go ahead and delete my previous spreadsheet, you can go ahead and change this to X, and then go down and let's just put our numbers in. We have 5.78 and negative 5.9, 58%, and then we have negative 23 over 4. Now don't worry, it looks like it changes the format a little bit when you exit out. Don't worry about that. Just go ahead and go over to statistics, change your axis on the bottom to X, and it's going to order them. And then it says from least to greatest. So the one furthest left is going to be the smallest number, and that's going to be this one down here. That's going to be 5.9, so negative 5.9. Now notice two of these have negative 5.9, so we can cancel out B and D, so it's either going to be A or C. Now we need to go to our second number, which is negative 23 over 4. Okay, so let's see. They both have negative 23 over 4. So okay, so we need to go to our third number. So let's go to the next number. It's 58%. And if you look at that one, C has 58%, A has a different value, so we know it can't be A. The answer must be C. Go ahead and pause this video and go to the next problem and see if you can answer it on your own. 38. A storage container for oil is in the shape of a cylinder with a diameter of 10 feet and a height of 17 feet. Make sure you underline keywords and box your answers. Which measurement is closest to the volume of the storage container in cubic feet? So we want to know which one is closest. So we have our values here. Do notice that it said diameter, right? And remember, when we get the diameter, if we want to get the radius, we got to divide it by 2 to get the radius. And our formula is going to be for the radius. Now if we looked at our formula, and we looked at it earlier in our formula sheet, it's V equals big B times H. We know that a cylinder, if we were to draw it out, the base is the shape of a circle. And so with that shape being a circle, we know that the formula for the area of the base is pi r squared, and then times h. So if I go ahead and plug in my values for it, they gave me a diameter of 10, so I'm going to divide that by 2, and that gives me my radius, which is 5. So I'm going to have pi times 5 squared times my height of 17. We can put that in our calculator and we'll have our answer. So I'm going to go home, go back up to calculate, and I'm going to go ahead and go pi times 5 squared times the height of 17. And it gives me 1335.18. That's the answer I'm going to be looking for, or something that's really close to it. And the closest answer is 1335 feet cubed. G is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try to do the next one on your own. This says the graph of a linear function is shown on a coordinate grid. What is the y-intercept of the graph of the linear function? So we want to find our y-intercept, and of course you can look at it and see where this line crosses the y-axis, but since they're giving you 2 points, we can also just put it in our spreadsheet and see which one of the answers matches our y-intercept at the end of our equation. So let's go ahead and go up over here, and we're going to delete this, go back into it. We're going to change this to x, change b to y, and let's put our ordered pairs. First of all, we have -4 and 6, so I'm going to put -4 and 6, and then we have 1 and -9. So we're going to have 1 and -9. Then hit home, go over to the purple option for statistics, change this axis to the left to y, your axis on the bottom to x. Then after that you can hit menu, option 4, 6, and 1. And here's our equation. It looks like we have a -3x plus -6. So when it asks for the y-intercept, I want you to keep in mind the y-intercept is the last digit on here, which is -6. This other digit that's in front of the x, remember, that's the slope. So our answer in this case is -6 is the y-intercept. So I'm going to put -6. Now you could have confirmed that by looking at this and say, well, where does it look like it crosses? And if you look right here, it does cross right at -6. Pause this video and try to answer the next question on your own. 40. Triangle ABC was translated 2 units to the right and 3 units down. Which rule describes the translation that was applied to triangle ABC to create triangle ABC prime? So when it said triangle ABC is going to be translated 2 units to the right and 3 units down. It even tells us that it's a translation. Remember, all translations are just slides where the object moves over by adding some value, and we'll call it k, to x, and by adding some value to y. So that's all we're looking for. We're looking for the values that are being added, and it even told us how much to add or subtract. Remember that our numbers get more positive going to the right and get smaller going to the left, or negative. So if we move to the left, it's negative. If we move to the right, it's positive. If we move up, it's positive. And if we move down, it's negative because our number decreases. So when it says that we move 2 units to the right, that's 2 units added to x. Therefore, we have x plus 2. And since it says 3 units down, we're subtracting 3 units from y. So which statement matches x plus 2, y minus 3? And if you look, x plus 2, y minus 3, G is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. 41. Nicholas has $650 to deposit into 2 different savings accounts.
Nicholas will deposit $400 into account 1, which earns 3.5% simple interest, and he will deposit $250 into account 2, which earns 3.25% interest compounded annually. Nicholas will not make any additional deposits or withdrawals. Which amount is closest to the total balance of these two accounts at the end of 2 years? Now this is going to be a multi-step problem because they're going to have us use simple interest and compound interest, and we need to take into account the total balance of each account to see where we're at. So let's go ahead and look at the breakdown. I'm going to ignore the 650 for now. That is our initial principal we're starting, but notice that they break it up into two different accounts. So we want to handle the principal for each account since we're going to be using those two different formulas. Nicholas will deposit $400, that's my first principal, into account 1, which earns 3.5%, that's my rate, annual simple interest rate. He will deposit $250, that's my principal for that one, into account 2, which earns 3.25%, that's my rate, interest compounded annually. Since it says compound, we're going to be using a compound formula for that one. Nicholas will not make any additional deposits or withdrawals. Which amount is closest to the total balance of the two accounts at the end of 2 years? That is my time for both of the problems. Now here's the issue. The compounded interest formula will tell you the account balance, principal and interest, but the simple interest will not tell you the principal. It's just going to give you the interest. So we'll have to add that interest to the principal at the end of that particular process. So let's take a look at our notes, our reference guide. Simple interest formula is I equals PRT, and a compound interest formula is A equals P times 1 plus R times T, or to the power of T. So let's write those down on our paper real quick. And I'm going to write them beside the problem that they're going to go with. For instance, this top one is just I equals PRT. The bottom one is going to be A is equal to P times 1 plus R to the power of T. So now that we know the formula we're going to use for each one of those, let's go ahead and plug in our numbers. I'm going to do the first one. So we have 400 times R, right, because we have I equals P R T, and my R is 3.5%. Now remember, you need to convert that to a decimal before using it, otherwise you're going to get the wrong answer. So if we have 3.5 and then we go ahead and put our percent sign in, it's going to give us 0.035, so 0.035, and our time is 2 years. So now let's go ahead and work this out. So let's see, we have 400 times our rate, 0.035, times 2. That's going to give us 28. Now that's just going to be our interest. We need to add that to the principal, right? Because it wanted to know which amount is closest to the account balance of these two accounts. So once two accounts added together, so let's add that to our principal, which was 400. So in that account, we're going to have $428. So I'm going to put account. Now we need to do the other half of the problem. So I'm going to move this up a little bit. The second one, we're going to be using the account balance is equal to P times 1 plus R to the power of T. So A equals P times 1 plus R to the power of T. My principal is $250 times 1 plus the rate, which is 3.25. If we don't know what that is, right, we can just put that in. So we could say 3 plus 1 over 4. Put a decimal after the numerator or denominator, so that way it'll convert it, and we want this to be a percent. So that's going to be 0.0325. So 0.0325 to the power of 2, because it's for 2 years. So let's put this in our calculator. 250 times 1 plus 0.0325 to the power of 2. So this account balance is going to be 266.51. Now we need to add these two values together. We're going to add 428 and 266.51. and that'll be our final answer. So we have $428 in one account, $266.51 in the other account. That gives me $694.51. So I'm looking for a total of $694.51. The correct answer is D. Go ahead and pause this video when you're done and move on to the next problem and see if you can figure it out. Number 42. On a field trip, there are 3 adults for every 45 students. Which graph models a relationship with the same rate? So we have 3 adults for every 45 students. And if we're trying to see which one models it, well, then we need to look at our axis, right? And figure out, well, which axis is going to be the adults and which is going to be the students. So notice we have a whole lot more students than adults. So the axis with a smaller amount of numbers and smaller increments will be the adults, and the axis with the students will be the one with the larger numbers. So that tells me that this y-axis must be the adults, and the axis on the x will be the students. Now, all we're going to do is try to find where our x value is 45 and our y value is 3, and we found the right graph. So let's see, these looks like they count by 15s. We have 0, 15, 30, 45, 60. So here's 45, and it goes to 1. So this is a ratio of 45 students to 1 adult. So it can't be F because we're supposed to have 3 adults. Here we have 45 students to 3 adults. So the correct answer is H. If we wanted to just check the others to see why they're wrong, here we have 45 students to 3 adults. Notice that it doesn't go through that point, so it can't be G. This one, 45 students, and we have 1.5 adult. I don't know exactly how you could have 1.5 adult, but somehow they managed to get that on this graph right here. So that doesn't even make sense. So we're going to go ahead and cross that out. So H is your correct answer. Go ahead and pause this problem and try to do the next on your own. 43. Pentagon ABCDE is rotated 180 degrees clockwise about the origin to form pentagon ABCDE prime. Which statement is true? Well, let's see. Which statement is true? It says it was rotated 180 degrees, and it says clockwise, so it turned, that's 90 degrees. This is 180, so it moved it to quadrant 3 from quadrant 1. And let's see what our statements are. Pentagon ABCDE is congruent to pentagon ABCDE prime. Okay, so I wanted to know a true statement. In this particular case, that definitely would be true, because ABCDE is going to be congruent, because when we rotate it, we don't change the shape. All we're doing, and now it'll change orientation, right? Like A's up here now, it'll be over here on the side right here, it'll be upside down on this side, but the shape stayed the same. Therefore, A is a true statement. ABCDE is congruent to ABCDE prime. So that is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and move on to the next question. Alright, question 44. The measures of 2 angles are 5x plus 24 and 9x minus 17. What is the value of x if these angles are congruent? So what I want you to think about is, when we say congruent, it means that they're equal. Or another way of saying that is that they're the same. And if they're the same, the mathematical symbol that represents the same or equal is the equal sign. So with that idea in mind, we're going to write an equation, because it wants to know what is the value of x if these are the same. We're just going to turn this into an equation with variables on both sides. So we have 5x plus 24, that's that one, is equal to this one, 9x minus 17. Now that we have that, we just need to put that in numerical solve and solve for x, and we'll have our answer. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit menu. I'm going to go down to algebra, numerical solve, and we have 5x plus 24 equals 9x minus 17, comma, x, because we want to solve for x. And it's going to give me 10.25. That is my answer. So let's see what answer choice matches up most closely to that. And our answer is J. Pause this video and try to solve the next question on your own. Alright, we have a rectangular prism and its dimensions are shown in the diagram. What is the total surface area of this rectangular prism in square inches? Notice it is asking for the total surface area. And if we looked at our formula chart, when we're trying to find surface area for a prism, and it's a rectangular prism, we can go over to surface area right here. And it says for a prism, the total surface area is going to be S equals pH plus 2b. So let's go ahead and write that down. We have S equals pH plus 2b. So P is the perimeter, and the perimeter is the distance around the bases. Now the base is the part that it sits on. So my base on this one, it's sitting on this bottom portion. And that means this top one that's directly above it is also going to be a base. So if I want the perimeter, then this side is 8.2. So I'm going to put that in there. We have 8.2 plus this side, which is 3.4, plus this back side that's long, which is the same as this one. So that's 8.2 plus this side right here, that's the same as this one over here, and that's 3.4. That's my perimeter times my height. Now notice that the height is the distance between these two bases. So what is the distance between this corner and this corner of the base? And that's going to be 2. That's my height. So times 2 plus 2 times the area of the base. You got to remember, how do you get the area of a rectangle? And you do base times height, or length times width. So we're going to have 8.2 times 3.4. And that'll give us our total surface area. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's put all these numbers in real quick. You're not using numerical solve, but you are going to put your parentheses in and do 8.2 plus 3.4 plus 8.2 plus 3.4, and then another parenthesis because you're going to be multiplying to the height, which is 2, plus 2 times the area of the base, which is 2 times 8.2 times 3.4, and hit enter. And it gives you 102.16. So S, the total surface area, is equal to 102.16, and this is going to be inches squared. That is your final answer. So go ahead, hit pause on the video, and see if you can answer the next one on your own. Number 46. The scatter plot shows the number of hours that 12 people spent learning to type on a keyboard and each person's average typing speed. Based on a scatter plot, what is the best prediction of a person's average typing speed in words per minute if the person has spent 70 hours learning to type? So in this case, again, we're going to need to draw a trend line, because if you notice, it says if a person spent 70 hours, these go by, it looks like 5s, so that's 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, and then we have 65, 70. Right, so this is a number of hours learning. So it says if the person has spent 70 hours of learning, what is this best prediction of his speed? So we're going to kind of go off the chart here. So what we need to do is draw that trend line so that we can make a really good guess on how much we think. So this one, if you notice, these dots are really close together. It's really a tight pattern. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we kind of want to see 6 and 6. So as soon as I kind of get this where I see 6, I'm going to stop and draw a line through it. 2, 3, 4, maybe about right there. And I'm going to just extend it out. Now, we want to go ahead and check and see, in this particular instance, if a person has spent 70 hours learning. So I want to extend this a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this first dot that I made. The next dot that lines up with that one, and this one lines up with this one, and this one lines up with that one, and so on. So notice they go by 5s. So we're at 55 and 60. It stops at 60. So if I were to do that, I could say, okay, well then this is 65, and that's 70. So if I'm going to go 70, I'm going to go ahead and make me a line now. And that gives me an idea of how many they would make. And if you look, this looks like it's really close to 85. Right in between 85 and 90. So my best prediction, if the person spent 70 hours learning to type, would be 85 words per minute. And H is the correct answer. Move the answer choices. Here are our answer choices right here. 70, 85, 55, and 100. Since our trend line looks like it cuts through 85, it's really close to 85, that is the best answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next on your own. 47. Carolyn will buy the same number of stamps every month to add to a stamp collection of her grandfather gave her. The table below shows the number of stamps Carolyn will have at the end of X months. How many stamps was Carolyn given, and how many stamps will she buy every month? So here's a table right here. If you want to know how many she's given, we're talking about how many she started with. And remember, when we talk about initial values, or what you're starting off with, that is always representative of the y-intercept. So if they want to know how many stamps was she given, that's going to be our y-intercept. How many stamps will she buy every month? Notice it says that word every, right? Remember, we have our keywords: per, every, each, and a. When you see that keyword, that's going to tell you that's unit rate. So that's the number that's going to go with the variable. That's our slope. With that being said, let's go and put this into our calculator and find which answer best fits it. So let's go down to spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and delete the previous spreadsheet right quick. Go back into it. Change A to X, B to Y, and then I'm going to go ahead and put in my numbers. So I have my X and Y. I have 1 and 250. And then I have 3 and 350. So notice I'm only going to put the first 2 points, just as usual. I'm going to go ahead and hit home. Go over to this purple option, which is statistics. I'm going to go ahead and change my left axis to Y and my bottom axis to X. Then I'm going to do menu 461 regression, which is for regression, and it looks like my slope is 50x. So my slope is 50, and my y-intercept is plus 200, so it's 200. So I have a slope of 50, so every month we're going to get 50 stamps, and we started with 200. So let's take a look and see which one of these answer choices matches that data right there. So it says Carolyn was given 200 stamps. Okay, well, she started with 200, so that's correct. And she will buy 50 stamps every month. My slope is 50, so that is correct. So in this particular problem, A is the correct answer. B is incorrect because it says she was given 180. Well, my y-intercept will have to be 180 for that to be true, so it can't be B. Given 180, can't be C. Given 200, well, that's correct. And she will buy 70 stamps a month. Every month. That's our slope, our unit rate, but it's only 50. And this is saying it's 70, so it couldn't be D. So A is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video and try the next problem on your own. 48. Which point on the number line best represents the location of the square root of 92? In this particular case, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to evaluate that. So let's go ahead and go here, go back to calculate, and let's put in the square root. So for the square root, we're going to actually hit control, and then we're going to hit x squared of 92. We're going to hit enter, and it gives us 9.59166. So let's go ahead and say, okay, well, 92, square root of 92 equals 9.59166. So we want to know which point best represents it. Okay, well, if this is 9, right here, this is 10, 9.5, even if I ignore the 966, 9.5 is going to be at the halfway mark, right? 0.5 is 1/2, so 0.5 is going to be right here, so we're going to be somewhere really close to here. And then it says 0.59. Well, 9 is greater than 0, right? So that means it's going to be past 0.5. And if you notice, P is the one that's past 0.5, but it's really close to it. So P is the best answer choice. So H is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause this video, correct your answer if you need to, and try the next problem on your own. 49. The list shows the number of songs that 5 students each downloaded last week: 32, 43, 38, 28, and 51. What is the mean absolute deviation of the numbers in the list? So, if we're going to find that, remember we do that in 3 steps. So in step 1, we're going to add all the numbers together and divide them by the number of digits. So we have that we're inputting. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 numbers, so we'll be dividing by 5. So we're going to have 32 plus 43 plus 38 plus 28 plus 51, all divided by 5. I'm going to put a decimal after it. It'll give me a value for step 1, and we're going to use that in step 2 in order to find the absolute value of difference. So let's go ahead and put these in real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and put my fraction bar. You can do it this way if you'd like. Put my parenthesis, 32 plus 43 plus 38 plus 28 plus 51. And on the bottom I'm going to put 5 and a decimal. I'm going to hit enter. It gives me 38.4. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go on to step 2. So step 2 is I'm going to use this number right here and subtract from each one of these numbers on top that's in our group of numbers. In other words, I'm going to do 32 minus 38.4. And I'm going to do 43 minus 38.4 and 38 minus 38.4 and 28 28 minus 38.4 and 51 minus 38.4. And then I'm going to write all my answers, but keep in mind I'm only going to write the positive value. Even though my calculator is going to say negative, I want the absolute value of each one of these measures. And so the absolute value means only the positive value, so you ignore negative signs. So I'm going to do 32 minus 38.4. That gives me 6.4. 43 minus 38.4. That gives me 4.6. 38 minus 38.4 gives me 0.4. And 28 minus 38.4 gives me 10.4. And then 51 minus 38.4 gives me 12.6. So now that I got these numbers, step 3 is going to be that I add all these numbers together and divide them by 5. Once again, because there's 5 numbers that we're adding up. So step 3 equals 6.4 plus 4.6 plus 0.4 plus 10.4 plus 12.6, all divided by 5. So let's go ahead and put this in our calculator. So we have 6.4, or you know what, let me put my fraction bar, and we have 6.4 plus 4.6 plus 0.4 plus 10.4 plus 12.6. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers divided by 5. And my answer is equals 6.88. That's my final answer. I've done all 3 steps, and so the correct answer is B. Go ahead and pause this video and then try to do the next problem on your own. Number 50. The graph models the linear relationship between the charge for a trip and the number of miles driven for two taxis. Based on the graph, which statement appears to be true? So let's go and take a look at our graph real quick. Keep in mind that anytime you have simultaneous linear equations and they're graphed, your answer is always going to have something to do with the solution, which is the point where the lines intersect. So it's going to have something to do with either this 5 right here or this 20. So with that being said, we know we're going to be looking for something related to that 5 and 20, that point of intersection. Let's read all of our statements. The charge for a trip with a distance of 5 miles is $5 greater for taxi 1 than taxi 2. Okay, at 5 miles, it's actually the same. They charge the same price. They both charge $20 for a trip of 5 miles. So F is false. The charge for a trip with a distance of 5 miles is $5 less. Well, we just said they're the same, so it can't be less. The charge for a trip with a distance of 5 miles is $20. That's true for both taxis 1 and 2. So H is the correct answer. That is a true statement. For 5 mile trip, they both charge $20. Go ahead and pause the video and try the next problem on your own. Number 51. Figure S, the small arrow, was dilated with the origin as the center of dilation to create figure T, the large arrow. Which rule best describes the dilation that was applied to figure S to create figure T? Okay, well, it says that the small arrow was dilated. So that means the small arrow is the original, and it's important to know. And the big arrow is the new one. It's the image. So with that being said, remember that rule where I said that if there is a number, a scale factor, I should say, that's less than 1, it makes it smaller. And if the scale factor is greater than 1, it makes it bigger. Well, going from this small arrow to this big arrow, we know the scale factor had to be greater than 1. So we're going to be looking for a rule that says x and y, and it's going to have some number greater than 1. So kx and ky, and k is going to be a number greater than 1. So let's take a look. In A, we have a number greater than 1. So that's a possibility. In B, we also have a number that's greater than 1. So B is a possibility. For C, it's a number that's less than 1. 1/2 is less than 1. Well, it didn't get smaller, it got bigger. So it can't be C. And for D, we have 1/4. Well, again, it didn't get smaller, it got bigger. So it can't be D. So now you got a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Just understanding that the scale factor had to be bigger than 1. Greater than 1. So now what we need to do is figure out what scale factor was actually used. And for dilation, all we need to do is find one point. You pick which point you want to find on this small arrow, and we're going to see where it moved to. And we'll see, did it move by being doubled its size, or did it move being quadrupled its size by a power of 4? So let's see what we got. So I'm going to use a positive number. I like using positive numbers, so I'm going to try this one right here. This one right here, it was at 0,3. That's what this point is right here. So that point right there on the small one is going to be 0,3. And it moved from 0,3 to 0,6. So it went from 0,3 to 0,6. So now, if I used a scale factor of 4, then I would have said 4 times 3, and it would have moved it to 12. Well, this is definitely not a 12, so it can't be B. And since this scale factor is a value of 2, then it means I'm going to multiply 2 times 3. So 2 times 3 would give me 6. And because 2 times 3 gives me that 6, then I know that 2 was the correct scale factor. Therefore, A is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause the video, correct your answer if you need to, and try to answer the next question on your own. Number 52. Veronica is ordering trophies for her school. Company P charges $3.50 for each trophy and a one-time engraving fee of $25. Company R charges $7.50 for each trophy and a one-time engraving fee of $17. Which inequality can be used to find X, the minimum number of trophies that can be ordered so that the total charge at Company P is less than the total charge at Company R? So let's take a look at this. We need to go ahead and figure out our equations. Notice they got two equations, one on each side. We need to figure out what our y-intercept is and what our unit rate is. So let's go ahead and break that up. First of all, we got two companies. We got company P and we got company R. And it says, in the end, which inequality can be used to find X, the minimum number of trophies that can be ordered, so that the total charge at company P is less, I'm going to underline that 2 times, less than the total charge at company R. Therefore, what we want to find is, we want to say company, and I'm just going to put CP, company P, is less than company R, CR. So now we need to find our numbers that represent the equation of company P and our numbers that represent the equation of company R. So company P charges $350 for each trophy. Notice it says for each, right? That's a key word. Remember our key words? Each, every, per, and. So let's go ahead and say that's going to have our variable X and a one-time engraving fee of $25. That's going to be our y-intercept. So we're going to have 350x or 3.5x. Either way, you can leave that last zero off. 3.5x plus 25. And that's going to be less than our company R, which charges $750 for each trophy. That's going to get our variable. So we have 7.5x and a one-time engraving fee of $17. That's our y-intercept plus 17. So which one of these equations looks like 3.5x plus 25 is less than 7.5x plus 17? So let's see, here we have 3.5. Here they put the x with the y-intercept. That's incorrect, so it's not F. Here, let's see, they put the x with that again, plus the sign's flipped over the wrong way. Here we have 3.5x plus 25. That matches that, so that's good. And it's 7.5x plus 17. That matches that. So H is the correct answer. Go ahead and pause the video and try the next one on your own. 53. Which scatter plots suggest a linear relationship between x and y? Keep in mind when we say linear, the idea is that we have points on a graph that are following very closely to a line. So there are no curves. So let's take a look at which one's linear. So if we look right here at A, notice that we could draw a trend line cutting through it. But do you notice how it's got this kind of U-looking part right here? That's a curve. So it can't be A. This one right here, we could try to draw a trend line through it. Same problem though, we have this curve right here. Because of that curve, it can't be C. On this one, if I draw a line through it, notice how the points follow the line really closely. So B is the correct answer. If we go to D, these lines, if I try to draw a line through here, the data, it's just spread out too far from it. So that would say this one right here is no association. So therefore it couldn't be D. Go ahead and pause the video and move on to the next problem. 54. Frankie bought a new computer. He made an initial payment of $50 to the store, and he will pay $30 each month until the computer is paid off. Which equation represents the relationship between M, the number of monthly payments Frankie has made, and T, the total amount that Frankie has paid to the store? Well, let's take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and write our equation. Let's figure out which one is our y-intercept and which one is our slope, our unit rate. So it says he bought a new computer and he made an initial payment. That keyword initial payment, that's telling you that's the first thing he paid of $50. Notice we don't see any of our keywords like per, each, and anywhere around here. So that tells us that's our y-intercept. And he will pay $30 each month. There's our keyword each. So that's going to get the x. So our equation is going to be y equals 30x plus 50. Now notice instead of using x and y, they're going to be using m and t. But the equation still is going to look the same. So what's on this side of the equal sign is going to look similar to what's on this side of the equal sign right here. So if we look, we have 50m. So, okay, well that doesn't say 30m, so that can't be it. This says 30m, that's good. And then it says minus 50. So we got that. Well, the problem is it says minus 50. But remember, if we're trying to figure out the total amount that Frankie has paid to the store, we're going to be adding 50, not subtracting it. So it can't be G. This one is 50m, so it can't be h. This one says 30m plus 50, and that matches what we have here, 30x plus 50. So J is the correct answer. 55. A party hat is shaped like a cone. The dimensions of the party hat are shown in the diagram. Which measurement is closest to the volume of the party hat in cubic inches? Let's move it up so we can see our answer choices. So if we went to look at our STAAR formula chart, this is a cone and we're trying to find the volume of it. So if we go over here and we go to pyramids or cone, the volume formula is 1/3 big B times H. So we know we're going to have that 1/3 in there. So V is going to be equal to 1/3 times big B times H. And remember our big B, right? The base of this is a circle. Even though they don't show it to us, we know the base of any cone is a circle. So big B is going to be pi r squared. Bring down our H times H, and bring down our 1/3. And that's because, remember, it takes 3 cones to fill up one cylinder that's of an equivalent size, that has the same base and the same height. So now that we got this formula set up, we just need to get our radius, and we can go ahead and solve this. Now notice they don't give us the radius. This goes all the way across, so it's the diameter. Therefore, we've got to remember that rule that the diameter divided by 2 gives us the radius. So we need to take our diameter of 6 divided by 2, and that'll give us our radius, which is 3. And now that we have r, we can go ahead and plug it in right here in the formula. So we should have 1/3 times pi times 3 squared times h equals, and we just need to put that in our calculator. So I'm going to put fraction bar 1/3 times pi times 3 squared times the height. And our height was, I shouldn't have put h, I should have put 9, because we know what the height is. It is 9. And equals 84.823. So the closest to the correct answer is 84.82. The correct answer is A. Go ahead and pause this video and try to solve the last one on your own. Alright, number 56 says, which graph represents y as a function of x? So we are looking for our problem that is a function. So which graph represents something that is a function? Well, the easy thing to do is let's do our vertical line test, and if anything that fails it, we can roll it out as a possibility. Well, if I do a vertical line through this one, notice it's going to hit twice. 1, 2. So it can't be F. If I do a vertical line on this one, it's going to hit virtually every point on that line. So it can't be H. If I do a vertical line test on a circle, it's going to hit twice. So it can't be J. And if I do a vertical line test on G, it only hits once. So therefore G is the correct answer. It is a function. And you are done with this tutorial. So good luck on your STAAR test, and I'll see you on Monday.